Good evening. This is Derek McCaw, editor-in-chief of FanboyPlanet.com, and welcome to the Fanboy Planet podcast. With me, as always, across the ether from the Brett Cave. This is the closest anybody's ever come to determining the location of the Brett Cave, because at least they can see some of it behind you.
They can see a lot of stacked up board games right now. So,
which pretty much is what they expected in their mind's eye that the Brett Cave looked like. So go ahead. And
I am Ric Bretschneider.
Yeah, I realize we don't have our names across the bottom, and that's okay, because it is just us this week, as we are going to, it's been a while, as we're going to talk about ComicCon at Home. This is normally, we're recording on Wednesday evening. Normally, this time of year, I'd be dead on my feet. It's like, because we've been standing in line for 4 hours or so, and walking the floor.
You're sitting on concrete.
Yeah. Yeah. You've been sitting on concrete. Somebody's called me and said, I've done this because I've been running from interview to interview. None of that is happening. Although I have reached out to one creator already and said, we had planned to do an interview and this year didn't. So we'll set one up for next week. I won't say on air, but at least I've got one ComicCon at Home interview, although it's ComicCon at the left, I guess, because, I don't think he had a panel. It's just somebody I thought we should be talking to. And there are a couple of others I think we'll be reaching out to. What?
There are always some like that.
Yeah. And normally we'd be doing that. So they've gone virtual. Before they do, of course, I want to say that if you have any questions, comments, compliments, commentary, criticism, write into editor@fanboyplanet.com. And you can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter and on Instagram, all at Fanboy Planet. Anything we talk about on this podcast that you could possibly purchase for your very own and you cannot find it at your local brick and mortar store, we do encourage you to use the Amazon link on each and every page of Fanboy Planet, a little search box. We are affiliated, which thus means that you may generate revenue for this site and for this podcast. And of course, if you wish to just help support the cause of doing a podcast, running a site, you can go to PayPal and donate at editor@fanboyplanet.com. Mentioned all the ways of communication. So let's talk about this now. It is ComicCon at Home. It officially began today. And yet,
I went to a panel.
Time is so out of joint that I seriously woke up at 9 this morning, having completely forgotten that this was the first day of Comic-Con. And I don't think I had anything on panel today that I wanted to watch. Thursday, definitely. Friday and Saturday, there's a couple of things where I'm like, this is cool. It just feels really weird and really different to me to not have like the concept of Hall H, or even just be able to wander the floor. Though I did wander their list of tables and booths and see if there was anybody that I wanted to check out. It's just not the same though for me. But you went to a panel, so I think you've got a better excuse there already, or better experience.
Well, I went to the Watchmen and the Cruelty of Masks panel.
I may watch that tonight, because I think that the advantage of YouTube is it's still up.
Yeah, you can watch it again. It was good. A lot of bringing the most recent Watchmen show that had a lot to do with masks into what's going on now with masks for COVID, and then masks that policemen are wearing, and you can't tell who they are, and it's really a prescient.
And I do say Damon Lindelof is getting freaked out on Instagram about this, and there's an article on Fanboy Planet about it as well. That is interesting. I really, I will try to catch up with that. I think the studios, such as they are coming, not many, are coming in starting tomorrow. There'll be a New Mutants panel. My money's still on, I'm just, crossing my fingers, they're going to actually show the entire movie on the panel, and then, it'll go away. I don't think they really will, but wouldn't that be awesome? Because that's the other thing that's missing from Comic-Con, is the movie screenings. There's some TV stuff. Marvel is going to preview Hellstrom for Hulu. And there are some, DC and Marvel on the comic side are definitely showing up. And there are definitely some conversations going to happen that'll be fun with that.
I had no trouble at all going through the schedule of events and filling the entirety of my day with potential things to watch. I mean, and doubled up at sometimes, like, if this isn't as good as I'm thinking, I'll switch over to the other one. But I've got something. Literally, I gave my schedule to my wife, and she said, "So basically, we're not going to see you till Monday." I said, "Yeah, kind of."
And then she looked up at the heavens and said, "Thank you, Comic-Con." What? No, it's. I don't think I'm not that packed. I marked a few things because I'm also taking a few days away, but I still want to spend some time watching things. It's just, it is weird. Like on Fanboy Planet, I've run some Comic-Con at home previews. The other thing that I would say is it's interesting that there are groups running almost like parallel conventions, just as they would have at Comic-Con. And I'm not just talking the installations, because tomorrow will be the virtual FX installation will start. The virtual Amazon Prime TV installation will start. Sorry, guys. No matter how cool that is, it will not hold a candle to being in the escape room for the boys or the escape room for the Expanse and getting the free, didn't we get a free veggie burger out of Carl's Jr. last year? Yeah. And FX always has something fun on the lawn, and I really miss that. And so it's thinking about, on Fanboy Planet today,
the best one was that Victorian, the fairy garden and
Carnival Row. Yeah, that was all the same installation last year, all Amazon Prime.
But as far as experience, that one was the best.
I will agree with that. I thought that was terrific. I was not as big a fan of the show.
Yeah.
Once it actually ran, and so that's the irony, is I liked the other shows better, but yeah, that was the best. That on fanboyplanet.com, I picked up today, there's a video from the San Diego Convention Center saying they miss us too. So you really needed to watch that video. It was kind of moving. It was like, because again, all of what's going on in the world is hitting the economy hard. We know that. But in San Diego in particular, 5 days of Comic-Con makes almost as much money in tax revenue and tourism dollars than the rest of the year.
Yeah.
5 out of 365 days is when they make.
Especially if you're a hotel.
Yeah. So I have been torn about whether or not it's like, if there is a convention next year and we are able to go, and I'm not making any predictions at this point, I'd like to be very optimistic and say, okay, everything goes super well. We're all able to meet in large groups again. And I'm like, do I want to go? And I'm thinking, yeah, because the things that I go to Comic-Con for, I can't get out of a virtual convention. I just can't. Another one I said today was, this is the first year since we became friends online, and I only use the quotation marks because we've literally never met. But the guy who runs Hero Tomorrow Comics, Ted Sikora, has not done a Comic-Con in like a decade. But this was going to be the first year. And so we had been planning for a couple of months before all this, like in December, saying, all right, you're going to go, I'll be there. Okay, we will definitely make plans to meet up. Finally, that's going to be awesome. And then, can't. So, but you can go to Hero Tomorrow and get an incredibly insane deal on their books. So anyway, go ahead.
Should mention for people who may not be following, I've run into so many people in this last week who haven't realized that it's all free.
I think you and I had a conversation last week that began with you asking, why hasn't Comic-Con done anything? And we said, yes, there's a free. Drew Campbell and I were talking with you and said, there's a free one. If you are not totally keyed into Comic-Con, you don't know.
I said I hadn't gotten any mail from them. Usually I get, and usually I get like the press releases, but because I wasn't signed up as press this year, I wasn't on the press release.
And I want to, for people to understand why Rick wasn't going to go to the actual convention.
Right.
And so, and even when there was final press registration, like the was when everything hit, they didn't announce what they were going to do. First Comic-Con was just canceled. So, it was like, why even try? I had done it early because I just don't know me. Otherwise, I would have forgotten. And yeah, so
No,
there it is.
I had 3 conventions that I had to choose from: Comic-Con, and the private one that Doug Garrett throws, and Gen Con. And now I'm not going to Doug's, of course, but I'm going to Comic-Con and I'm going to Gen Con for the first time in years. And that one actually costs money.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
So I was going to say the parallel cons. Adult Swim is running their own, mostly in the evening, but the same days. So they're going. So if you want anything that's involving the Adult Swim programming, there's a Robot Chicken live panel at 5 p.m. Pacific. You have to actually go to adultswim.com/presents/con and tune in through there. They're having a fantasy DJ set on Thursday night. I don't know how that's supposed to work. A summer showdown finale, a cosplay cup, a Rick and Morty panel on Friday the 24th. Now I'm not sure when we get this podcast out, but there you go. There's a watch party. So they're not in terrible competition with Comic-Con. It's more like what you'd expect them to have done in the evening, because that's the other thing. There's no nightlife at a virtual convention except for what people do, like, watch parties and that sort of thing. So they're trying. I've gotten a press release from another group that is a comic book company called Genesis 2 Comics. And so they're having once a day, there's going to, and you can follow this Genesis Roman numeral 2 Comics on Facebook. And once a day, their publisher is going to talk about a different book that they're putting out. So, I mean, it's not a bad thing. It's more like you're really just kind of stopping by their booth and hearing their pitch, and that's cool. And it's the other thing that I'm missing too, is I often, especially in Artist Alley, I walk by and I see a book that catches my eye, or a print, and I discover a brand new artist. I just haven't had the time to focus on that with the PDF. So you also did the one thing that I think is going to be the biggest headache at this con, because if it's all free and everybody can attend, you tried to get a Funko exclusive today.
I tried to get 2 of them.
You tried to get 2. Well,
2 different ones. I wasn't hoarding them.
It doesn't matter because you didn't get either. But anyway, go ahead and explain your experience.
So it had been announced long before that they were going to open the Funko web page for this stuff at 5 p.m. California time, Pacific. I was there right at 5. I got in, put 2 things in my basket, and went to check out. So that was like 5:02. There was trouble with it because I have a Funko account, which I realized I must have set up the last time I bought. I don't buy a lot of Funko. I just
but you got a Johnny Quest and Haji, so
that was
had been
because they gave me, I think they gave me like a 10% off on something if I signed up for an account. So I had to log in through the account. There were a couple of times I went through on that where it was saying my credential wasn't taken. And I go, yeah, your server's having trouble. So at like 7 minutes after 5, I was in the checkout, and I got to the point where it wanted to calculate shipping costs. That took 50 minutes. And when it was done, both items were already sold out.
That's terrible.
Yeah. So
I wonder how many people have had that same experience.
No, hundreds. I was watching Twitter at the same time. Apparently, the same problem occurred a week or 2 ago when they had just one new figure came out. And the real problem with it, and with getting slightly technical in the world of cyber business, they don't do a lock on your item when you put it in your cart. So when you go to check out, they don't lock that item. They don't check for inventory. They don't lock the item, which is what, if you check out on Amazon or any of the legitimate businesses that are on the web, they know their inventory. They put a lock on the item, and you're going to go through their checkout, but not Funko. It was and not anything new. They've just been like subpar and handled.
I don't know how that's going with the other retailers. Tomorrow morning, this is an interesting one. Mattel is going to try to do all their sales through their Instagram
Yeah,
account.
that's scary.
Yeah. So next week, if we get a chance to record next week, we will tell you how that goes, because I'm going to try, just for the sake of seeing how it works. I know a new Instagram was rolling out a sales connection, but I'm concerned that that's there. And, the other thing is, again, if you're at a regular convention, Funko would not have thousands of people
No,
online trying to get in.
they have shut down the line.
You'd have your 500 people in line.
They
This
say,
is the closest, by the way, that I came to purchasing official ComicCon 2020 merchandise, because they didn't pivot and make anything ComicCon at home. They just called it. They still had the same ComicCon 2020 and still do, but one T-shirt had front of the line, and on the back was back of the line. And I thought that would be funny, but it's only going to be funny if I get to go to Comic-Con again. So
were there things at Mattel that you wanted to get?
What?
Were there things at Mattel that you wanted to get?
I am vaguely interested. There is the pickup truck with the Hulk and Rocket Raccoon from Endgame, it's from Endgame. Yeah. And I thought, well, that's kind of cute. I like to pick those up. Like, I have the Spock on the Chevrolet, and I have the Thanos in the helicopter.
Mystery Machine. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get a Mystery Machine, but I just have a few random things. And I thought, if I get it, great. And if I don't, it's okay. My son is at an age where they're not things to get him. He'll go, oh, cool. So it's okay. I don't feel that drive. I miss books.
I did like the X-Wing, the Dagobah X-Wing.
It's cool, but mostly at Comic-Con for me, it is about finding books that I wouldn't have picked up elsewhere or read otherwise. And so, which again, I guess that the advantage of not being able to get to the comic shop regularly is I am catching up on some things, and so I need that time too, and that's good. But speaking of getting to the comic shop, do you have a pick of the week? And we're going to make it really more like a pick of the month, because not everybody can get to shops. But
this is, I like you. I mean, there were a long time that I wasn't getting comics, and now the comics I'm getting are kind of like in a run of things that I haven't been reading. So I've been holding the Batman stuff up until we get into the Joker War, which the first issue of that came out this week. So I'm setting those aside because I like reading those as a run. And I bought the Authority Omnibus, and I'm halfway through that right now. I've been really enjoying that because I read it all when it first came out, but reading it all like every day I read like 4 issues of it out of that. I prop it up. We've always talked about you need a stand for those books. I put 2 books down and I lean the Authority against it and I read it like it's like family Bible or something. But so what I was going to share this week is Annihilation Scourge, which was the big event that only lasted 6 issues.
Was that this year?
That was this year. That's hang on. Wow. They've hidden the indicia somewhere. Is it on the inside of the front cover?
As long as you were able to pick it up at a shop recently, it's
so there. Anyway, the whole thing of this is they did an event. So they're all first issues. So this is the first one. And then they went through Nova, Fantastic Four, Beta Ray Bill, Silver Surfer, and then I'm going to cover the spoiler on the last one, which was the Omega issue. This is something that I wish they do. They're doing better on these things where they put the tie-ins outside of the normal run of the tie-in titles. Yeah. And in fact, Beta Ray Bill doesn't have a title to tie in right now, so you got a Beta Ray Bill coming out. The funny thing about this is this ended just about the same time they started running up Empire.
Yeah, I figured it was a roll into it, right?
And it just seemed like an editorial mistake to do two stories about intergalactic adventures of normally Earthbound heroes, and bringing them out against the Skrull and the Kree and all this other.
Rick, that's where they fooled you. You
Yeah.
thought you were getting 6 individual issues of a crossover tie-in event, and that was all it was. And you said they played fair.
Yeah.
What you actually got was a prelude to a 2,400 issue crossover event that will never end now.
It's not tied into it at all. This is a callback to the Cancerverse and all that stuff that happened in the original Annihilation, and where we got all the characters. We got the new Guardians of the Galaxy and the Nova Corps and all that.
Okay, so anybody listening or watching this, please, if you do read Empire and you're ahead of Rick and myself, and you will be, because as Rick says, he stacks them up. I come back like a year later and go, oh yeah, there's a trade. I'll read that. So if somewhere there's a footnote in which Empire ties into Annihilation Scourge, by all means, please write in and tell us that one of us is right or wrong. I don't know which one of us, but
I've actually read the first 2 issues of Empire.
Oh no, I'm not saying it's going to be early on.
No,
it's
yeah,
going to be like, a last issue going, guess what?
Hey, guess what? Yeah, sure. I can accept that. But I hopefully you won't have to have read this. This is a public service announcement, because this is the smallest big event ever, with something that involves all of the universe, all of our universe, and all of the Negative Zone, and all of the Cancerverse, and calls back to events ending in that original run. It's such a weak story. It's just kind of pitiful. And I love the fact that they packaged it this way, but if you're going to tell a big story, tell a big story. It's like you have people, it's like in Shakespeare, right? When they want to talk about, oh, there's battle going on over there. Look, everything's burning. It's people watching stuff that's happening. Very little actual fleets of spaceships coming in, or it was
a shame, because you can draw those much more easily than computer generate them.
Sure.
So my recommendation is not to stay away, but I was recommended at Earth 2 Comics, so thank you to Heather Kennelly, that Adventure Man by Matt Fraction and Terry and Rachel Dodson. It is a throwback or an update of pulp heroes of the 30s and 40s. Matt Fraction has a really nice essay in the back of the first issue in which he talks about how he admits he's only read a few novels of the Spider, maybe a couple of Doc Savages. So it's really more like Matt Fraction's impression of what they're like, more than true, pulp lovers' knowledge of how it works. And that's okay, because Matt Fraction's such a doggone good writer. So he's got a pastiche that sort of puts some of the superpowers in. It's clear that the character from the 30s known as Adventure Man is Doc Savage mostly, but many other things as well.
It's an homage.
It's an homage. It's a pastiche. It's also, though, coming to it's as if Grant Morrison went back in time and had disguised himself as Kenneth Robeson and rewrote all of Doc Savage. And maybe it's Maxwell Grant, too. Maxwell Grant, Grant Morrison, but it's actually Matt Fraction. So anyway, gorgeous book. The first issue, if you can find it, and I think you still can, because I saw it still on the stands at Earth 2, it's $3.99, double size for $3.99, with a huge essay in the back about like the inspiration and some sketches and so forth. The second issue is normal size, still $3.99. And then in the back, because of course in between issues, the world kind of went crazy. And so something that I haven't seen a comic do yet, or a comic book writer or editorial team do yet, is he Matt Fraction put in charities to support through this time. Not just Black Lives Matter, the big ones, but also did some research in smaller, so that you have it at your fingertips. Of course, everybody has them at, on the internet, but it was really cool to be reminded in a book as I was reading this away from all my devices, and went, oh yeah, thank you for the reminder. So I really like that, but mostly it was both issues have just been a fantastic read. Something happened to Adventure Man in the 30s. It's implied maybe he lost his final battle. And then there's this single mother in the 21st century who is a librarian, and her son loves the Adventure Man books, and they get handed. So this is where you're going to love it. Fraction's real inspiration is that someone first gave him Doc Savage, His Apocalyptic Life by Philip Jose Farmer. So this kid in the first issue gets a book that is essentially the Adventure Man, His Apocalyptic Life, that nobody else on Earth has ever seen.
Oh.
So he's discovered this concordance, and both Tarzan Alive and Doc Savage, His Apocalyptic Life are books that to me feel like, I could be wrong, but they were kind of the first of their kind, treating these fictional characters as, aside from we know, and we're deep into that group with the Wold Newton people and so forth, but treating it as if it was real and giving the historical background. So
I think because the gimmick of them all being coming out of one event and all the connections comes from Farmer, who called it Wold Newton.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure Farmer was the originator of that.
I don't want to get into a rabbit hole about Farmer, because I think there's a virtual convention about that coming up somewhere, and
yeah, definitely
I'm going to actually attend that just because I want to know. But even if you don't know any of that, it's just a super fun read. Just as I realized, and I'll point people's attention to a review on Fanboy Planet. I listened to almost all, because it's massive, the Audible audiobook adaptation of the Sandman, just the first 3 arcs, and that they kept all the references to the DC Universe mainstream. I was curious if they would, and was concerned, like, well, does somebody who's not into the comics, will that throw them off? And I realized, no, the way Gaiman had written it originally was, it was cool that I knew who they were, but it absolutely does not matter listening to it. And if I may say, in audio, there are pieces of the Sandman that are so much more frightening because your imagination has to fill it in. But there are sound effects that I never in my life even considered going along with those characters, that it's an amazing adaptation. And they're going to do the whole thing, but they just released the first 3 volumes as one big audio book for now.
So is it a production or is it a reading?
Yes.
So are there multiple voices?
Neil Gaiman narrates it.
Okay.
And I read an interview where he said that a lot of it was actually his original script, like panel descriptions too. So it's present day, present tense, describing characters and so forth. And then the dialogue is by actors, sound effects, music. Sometimes, and this is where it differs from the comics, is that it shifts points of view. So John Constantine narrates the issue basically from the original run that he appeared in. So you get his viewpoint as to what was going on. Rose Walker narrates a couple of times. Jed Walker, the kid, you hear it from his point of view as well. But James McAvoy plays Morpheus, and though I think when they get around to the TV series, he's too old, because they Morpheus is consistently described as looking like he's 20 or 21. Kat Dennings is Death, and she is astounding.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And James McAvoy is astounding as Morpheus. Like, it brings new subtlety and interesting characterization. That's been a long time since I've read the Sandman, but I got into the apartment last night and immediately took the first volume off my shelf and said, okay, this week I'm rereading most of Sandman because it's been so long. and Riz Ahmed is the Corinthian, and disturbing and deadly, and it's just terrific. So I was skeptical when I first heard they were going to adapt it, because I was like, of all things to go to audio is comics. It just doesn't make sense to me, but this works. It really, really works. So I don't know that any comic would do, but a work with the depth of the Sandman absolutely does. So
and that's on Audible.
That's on Audible. You can either, get it through the app, or they do sell it on CD. It's $30.
Hachette? Is it Hachette Books or Audible original production?
Audible original. It's Audible original in association with DC.
Okay.
So it's terrific. Speaking of DC, so I want to wrap up this podcast with interesting news. We're always concerned about streaming. DC Universe is no longer accepting annual subscriptions. The streaming service, you can only pay month to month now, which tells me we're not going to have DC Universe much longer. Stargirl was renewed for season 2, but only on the CW. DC Universe is not going to be running the second season of Stargirl. Harley Quinn is now, the first 2 seasons of Harley Quinn are going over to HBO Max, as Doom Patrol is already on HBO Max. And I did compare. When you watch Doom Patrol on HBO Max, it says an HBO Max original. When you watch it on DC Universe, it still says season 2, it's a DC Universe original. But HBO Max is absolutely branding. And again, as we've talked before, it's the global streaming service, so it sort of makes sense.
Yeah.
But if Warner Media, so hear me now, people, if anybody from Warner Media is paying attention to this podcast, I'll pay $5 a month for the DC Universe comics access, because I've really found that very helpful. No, there's no Vertigo stuff on there, which I again double checked because of Sandman, but they're slowly loading up so much classic stuff. There's a lot of stuff from the 40s and 50s, as well as moving forward. It's obviously very heavy on New 52 and Rebirth, because that's about when they were starting to think about doing this. And even then, there's so much I didn't buy then that I'm going back and reading. And, I think as a comics reading app, it would still be a good buy. I'm just sorry to say goodbye to DC Universe, which they're not putting the bow on it yet, but I kind of think that's what's happening. If you're not going to take a year's subscription, it's because you don't think that you're going to be running this a year from now. So
one thing, I have to give you credit. I had wanted to read Manifest Destiny for a long time. You had talked about it before. You mentioned it in the last episode.
Actually, we didn't record that. We were just talking with Drew Campbell that I mentioned.
Were we just talking? Okay. Wow.
Yeah, we were testing this.
Oh, that's right. That's why it felt like a podcast. So you had been talking about Manifest Destiny, which is a fantasized retelling of the Lewis and Clark expedition, where they're on a secret mission to.
Right. And the 7th trade just came out last week.
So you can actually, Comixology has the trades in digital form, and the first 6 issues of that you can get for like $3.50. And the ones following that aren't that expensive right up until the most recent. So like they're like $5.50 for the ones after that, or almost $6
again. That is a bargain.
And they are great stories. I've been like parsing my time out on what I'm reading, because I also started Brandon Sanderson's Way of Kings, which is a lifestyle. But that, and if you have the Comixology Unlimited, it's free. You can just read it.
Well, and in general, that's one that I only buy in trade, because I know that if I had to read Manifest Destiny in single installments, I would go crazy, because I can handle there's a cliffhanger or an edge at the end of 6 issues.
Yeah.
But monthly, that would have driven me up the wall. It is so good, so intriguing.
Yeah.
I can't believe that in this rush for everything to be adapted, that has not been picked up yet.
It'd be perfect. It'd be absolutely perfect. It could be shot in Canada. where, you know.
No, it would. I mean, and I wouldn't object to it being a Canadian production. I mean, because that's where you'd still have the wilderness, and yeah, it would be terrific. So, you know, once again, maybe 2021 we'll hear about something. So, you know, thanks everybody for tuning in, paying attention. I know you have a lot of things, pop culture podcasts and vidcasts and everything competing for your attention this weekend. You have a ComicCon competing for your attention. So if you shared this time with us, we really appreciate it. That means a lot. So you know, once again, if you have any questions, comments, compliments, commentary, criticism, write into editor@fanboyplanet.com. I'm Derek McCaw, editor-in-chief of fanboyplanet.com.
And I'm Ric Bretschneider, reminding you to
use your powers for good.
That almost worked.
We're going to leave it because I think that's funny.
I don't think we ever told anybody that we have to record that when we do audio. We have to, each of us record it separately, and then I cut them together in post.
We're telling them now.
Yeah. Good night.